happening? It's been a while since you've heard any biker stories from me, and being an old biker, I've got a lot of them. But I thought today, we could take a ride on the scooter. Let's see what happens. Ignition on, crank the starter button. Let's try it again. It ain't gonna pop. It ain't gonna go. And I'll tell you why. It likes cold weather. It does. But however, temperature right now is right under 30 degrees, probably 29 degrees. And usually she won't start up unless it's about 50 degrees. So, I can see my breath here in the garage. And it's ice cold. So if I had a heater, I could keep by it for a little while, warm up that oil. It'd start right up. And but at this temperature, I'm not going for a ride. I'm not going for a ride either because it's snow. It snowed last night, so the roads are a little slippery and. I got no reason to go out and freeze my buns off. I thought I'd tell you a little story about this scooter anyways, because this thing's taken me around. I've had it since, I've had this one since 1999. And at that point, it was pretty much brand new. Now the bike doesn't have anything on it that's original, almost everything on here, aside from the engine and the frame. Everything's been redone, and I'll tell you what, I got a story. I got a story about how I crashed my bike. Now, a couple people have been asking me about this, so I thought, well, this is a good time. It's winter time. It's a good time to spin some stories. So this is a true story, but I'm going to tell you the whole thing from start to finish here. So it was in the year 2000. And I had rode the Harley out to Sturgis, South Dakota, solo, as I did. I had been in a couple of clubs and had done some riding with them, but I found out it was much better for me to be independent and ride alone. I could do my own thing, go when I wanted to go, stop for breaks when I wanted, and I don't know, call it self-centered. I just got along better by myself. So I had a wonderful time in Sturgis, by the way. Met a whole bunch of new friends and had a good time. Spent a week out there. And I left Sturgis in the morning. Can't remember exactly what day it was. I think it was a Saturday morning. About 10:30 in the morning, I packed up everything, loaded up the bike with all my gear, and I headed for home. I rode all day, and come evening, I was getting kind of tired, so I thought I better stop somewhere and sleep. And I wasn't about spending money on a hotel. And I'd done campgrounds and stuff. I had a tent and everything, so I was all set for camping. But at the time, I thought, I don't know, I don't feel like going to a campground or paying for anything. Just to sleep. So I found one of these roadside off the expressway. It was a roadside pull-off for trucks, for semi-trucks. It was just a gravel parking lot, and that was on the west side of Des Moines, Iowa. So I pulled in there, and I went way down to the end of the parking lot to the far corner, and I parked my bike right on the edge corner there. Didn't want to get run over by a semi. And I rolled out my sleeping bag and everything. I laid it right over the saddle here. So I had my head up here on the tool bag and had my thermarest cushion and my sleeping bag on the bike, so it made like somewhat of a bed. I didn't want to sleep on the ground because when you're not in your own neighborhood, you don't know what kind of critters are on the ground there. I didn't want to get ticks or chiggers. spiders or snakes. I don't know what's there. So I thought, I'll just sleep up on the bike. And I fell asleep fairly comfortably. I mean, it wasn't like my bed at home, but at least I could sleep. And I was up off the ground. Probably slept for about an hour or so when I heard footsteps coming through the gravel. And it alerted me, so I sat up and I saw this trucker walking towards me. And, I said, "What's up?" And he says, "Well, if you look over to the west there," he said, "you can see the sky lighting up with some lightning and you can hear the thunder." He said, "I just thought I would warn you, there's severe storms with tornado warnings and they're coming this way." And he said, "I didn't think you wanted to be caught out here." Now, he said, "If I can recommend something for you, if you keep going east through Des Moines, about 10, 15 miles on the other side of Des Moines, there is a rest area, and they have a shelter there, like a picnic shelter." And he said a lot of times the truck drivers will go under that picnic shelter, and you can sit under there if it's raining or whatever and be protected from the weather. So I thought, well, that's a good idea. He said, "You could sleep on one of the picnic tables inside the picnic shelter and nobody will bother you." He said they do it all the time. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I rolled everything up, packed everything up, put it on the bike, and I could see the ominous sky in the distance. I could hear the thunder rumbling way off in the distance. And I hit the road. By now it was pushing like 11:30, going on midnight, something like that. It was getting pretty late. So I made my way all the way through Des Moines, through the big city, and was heading outside of Des Moines. And the highway was split there. So the oncoming traffic was kind of divided by this great big, like, valley of woods and everything. You couldn't even see the westbound lane. And I was traveling east, and it was dark, and I was doing fine. I was running about 70 miles an hour, and I'm in the fast lane, and I'm coming up pretty fast on a tractor trailer who was over in the slow lane. No big deal. All of a sudden, just like within an instant, I see this white car come up in my peripheral vision. I could hear the swish, and he was coming at such a high rate of speed, and he came right up beside me, and at the same minute, he's changing lanes right into me. Well, next thing I know, I see the taillight actually right against my leg. And I knew that he was going to knock me off the road. So in a really quick invasive maneuver, I cut the bike to the left to get away from him. When I did that, I shot off towards the berm of the road, which would have been the center of the expressway. There really wasn't anything there except for a great big concrete sign pillar that had one of these big, overhead highway signs attached to it. And then just beyond that, I had maybe 25 foot or so beyond that was a guardrail. And I was heading right for either one of them, so I took the easy route, went right in between the two. I was going right off the road. I didn't have any other choice at that high speed, and it happened so fast. I didn't even have time to think about it. But I did think about one thing. I thought about Jesus, and I kept saying, "Jesus, help me, Jesus, help me," because I thought right then, I'm going to die today. This is the last thing I'm going to do. This is it. There's no way I'm going to live through this. Well, I shot right between the concrete and the guardrail, and there was a ravine. I mean, it went down steep. The whole embankment just dropped off really steep. So I was kind of riding along the side of that and dropping altitude as I went. I was going real fast, and I kept hitting these big erosion ditches, which would actually send me airborne. Well, I remember from when I was a kid riding a dirt bike, you stand up on the foot pegs and you hang on. And that's what I did, and I was actually airborne at least twice. Hit the ground so hard, the shocks just caved all the way down, and bam! But I still maintained control. And I was able to ride this thing, and I knew if I hit the brakes because of the slope that I was on, that the bike would just flip out. So I just kept it going down there without hitting any brakes or anything. I thought, I can ride this out, I can ride this out. My headlight was just kind of all over the place, but I could kind of see there wasn't really anything in front of me. And all of a sudden, I felt like, okay, now I'm getting control, because I was now doing probably about 30 miles an hour. I thought, okay, I can probably survive this now, okay? But I'm almost at the bottom of this ravine now, and there's cattails to my left, like must have been a swamp down in there or something, in between the two highways. And all of a sudden there's like this broken off little oak tree laying across. I mean, it's probably like that big around, but it's laying completely across my path where I have to go, and there's nowhere for me to go. So I hit this thing, and the bike just wedges right into the branches, and I go flying over the handlebars, right over the windshield. I probably flew about 35 foot and landed upside down on the back of my shoulders, my neck, and it kind of collapsed my whole body down. In doing so, kind of crushed my chest in, knocked the wind out of me. I was in these dried up cattails. I get up, and the first thing you do, you like feel yourself, make sure everything's okay. You're looking for blood and everything. I didn't see anything. I was up, standing up. I'm looking around. My legs are there. My arms are there. I'm actually here. I'm alive. The bike's over there wedged into this little tree, and it's still running. So I walked over there and I turned the ignition off. The thing kind of was flopped over on its side, and it had all these dried up leaves and limbs jammed into it, and I started pulling all the branches away from it and getting it out of the brush. And I went to, I thought, well, I got to get the bike up, because I could see gas dripping out of the gas cap. I thought, I got to get it up on its wheels, at least get the kickstand down. So I bent over to pick the thing up and realized that hurt. I was in tons of pain at that moment, and I thought, uh-oh, something's really bad here. But I still wanted to get the bike up. I was really concerned about that. I didn't want a fire to start or something. So I turned around and I put my, ass up against the seat, grabbed hold of the handlebar like you're supposed to, and just kind of like walked the thing up and got it back up on its wheels. Put the kickstand down and checked it over a little bit. But by then, I was breathing heavy. I was starting to get really sick on my stomach, and I felt like I was going into shock. I had to take some kind of action, and I had to really stop and think about what was going on here. To check over the bike from one end to the other. The fender was all bent into the tire. I was able to grab that and yank it over a little bit, but I had to go lay down. So I kind of went up the bank a little bit where it was grassy, and I just laid back there on the bank and just had to get my wits together for a couple minutes and just rest, because my adrenaline was like sky high, and I just wasn't feeling it right at that moment. Well, after laying there for a few minutes, I thought, okay, I feel good enough to get up and check things over. I thought, I got to get out of here, number one. So I went back over and I started the bike up. It started up, but the headlight wasn't on. The headlight wasn't working, and I thought, oh no, and I tried messing with it, and I couldn't get the headlight to come on. Now the headlight was on after I crashed it, but once I turned the ignition off and started it again, I had no headlight. Maybe I turned them off at the handlebar. I don't know. But see, at that moment, and it being as dark as it was, I was in shock. I didn't know what was going on. Well, I tried looking for a way out. The embankment was up so steep. When I looked up, all I could see was the running lights of semis going by over the top of the guardrail. I was way down in the bottom of this ravine. I couldn't drive the bike straight up, no way. So I thought maybe I can traverse up through this valley and eventually get back up on the road. Well, I tried walking up that way, and I found these erosion ditches that I had jumped over on the way down. They were like 3 foot deep. They were huge. And I thought, there's no way I can get back across those, not with an 800-pound Harley Davidson. It's not going to happen. So I went back, and in my confusion, in my state of confusion, I ended up losing my gloves, and that had me all concerned. I started digging everything out of my saddlebags. And then I realized all of a sudden, I thought to myself, you're wasting your time here. You're not doing anything. Your bike isn't going anywhere. As long as you stay here, you're not going anywhere. You've got to get help. So I jammed everything back in the saddlebag, tied everything up, took what was valuable, and hiked up the top of the hill back to the guardrail, where I stood there and tried thumbing down every vehicle, every semi, every car and truck that went by. Nobody would stop. I'd hear the semis coming along, and they'd see me, and they'd hit the Jake, and whoa. And then they'd get a look at me, and they thought, oh, that's a dirty biker on the side of the road, and boom, they'd just keep right on going. Cars would slow down, and then they would just keep right on going. I thought, well, maybe they can't see me. So just a little bit down the highway, I saw this sheet of aluminum. I went down there and I picked it up, and I was holding it up, flashing it, like, help, help, help. They just all zoomed right by. So I knew I had to hike back down to the next exit, which was about a mile down the road. At that exit, there was a casino. So I did. I hiked all the way back down the ramp to the casino and walked in the front. Well, the place was fairly deserted. There was a counter there, like a little soda fountain counter, and some booths where I went into that entrance. And there was an old timer behind the counter. And I told him my story. I said, my bike is crashed up there on the highway, and I need help. Could you please call the police or call an ambulance for me? And he said, I don't have a phone that you can use. I was like, what? I said, excuse me, but I'm injured. I said, I have internal injuries. I'm in shock. I said, my bike is down over the ravine there. A car ran me off the road. And I said, could you please call the police for me? And he said, I don't know their phone number. So then I started getting irritated, and I said, you do know 911, don't you? Call it, please, and call it now. So reluctantly, he goes over there and he dials the phone, and I hear him on the phone, and he says, yeah, there's some guy here, and I don't know if he's trying to cause trouble or not. No, he doesn't appear to be hurt or anything like that. I was beside myself. I thought, you got to be kidding me. I told you that I was injured. I told you that I crashed my motorcycle, and you're going to tell the police that he's fine, he's just something screwbally with him? Anyway, I told him that. He says, there, I called the police for you. And I said, thank you. I said, could I please have a cup of water or something, because my mouth was parched, and they say when you're in shock, you want to drink, but you're not supposed to drink. Well, he told me, he goes, if you go down this hallway and you make a left and you go all the way down to the end, there's a drinking fountain. You get a drink there. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to walk over here and I'm going to sit down in this booth at this table, and I'm going to wait for some help. So I went over and I sat down. I put my head down on the table. A couple minutes later, he brought me a cup of ice water, and I was sipping on that. And not too long after that, a policeman arrived and walked up, and the first thing he said was, are you all right, sir? I said, no, I'm not. I have some internal injuries, and I'm not even sure what they are. But I said, I told him the whole story. I crashed my bike up there on the highway. He got on the radio. Within seconds, he called an ambulance. About 10, 15 minutes later, an ambulance arrived, and they loaded me up, and they took me to a hospital where I spent the next 3 days with broken ribs and bruises, and just they wouldn't let me out of bed. I had to lay there and recover. I couldn't even hardly breathe. My chest hurt so bad. The police officer came to my room and he asked me, where exactly is your motorcycle? I tried to explain to him the best I could, about a mile up from the casino on the eastbound lane, off to the left-hand side down over a ravine. I explained to him how I went between the pylon and the guardrail, and it was down in there. He said he'd find it for me. Came back the next day, and he says, "We found your bike, Mr. Avery." The volunteer fireman that helped me find it couldn't believe that you rode the thing down there and lived. We found your tracks. We found where you entered the exited off the highway, and we followed your tracks all the way down in there. And we were just amazed that you rode that bike down there like you did. We got the bike winched up over the guardrail with a tow unit, and we took it to a storage garage, and we made sure it was all covered up. We put a blanket over it, tucked it in. It'll be there when you can pick it up. I said, thank you very much. I was relieved to know that my bike was okay. Sometimes a biker worries more about his bike than he does about his own health. A couple days later, my aunt and uncle picked me up and took me to Illinois. I spent a night there. The next day, my mom and dad drove all the way from Ohio to Illinois, picked me up, and it took me the rest of the way home, where I was able to recover for a couple days. Now, one of my old biker buddies showed up about 10 o'clock one evening, and he said, "We got to go get your bike. It's in Des Moines, Iowa." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I'll help you out. You want to go get it?" I said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "Well, let's go." I said, "Right now?" He said, "Yeah. Let's go right now." Okay. He says, "I'm driving." We had his pickup truck. I jumped in there with him, and he drove straight through, all the way to Des Moines, Iowa. We arrived there about 6 a.m. to the storage facility. There was my bike. We loaded it up on the truck, paid the fellow the fine, whatever the fee was for storing the bike, and he was pretty reasonable about it. And then my buddy insisted he was going to drive all the way home, which he did. He drove, and he's an ex-Army Ranger. He drove the whole way home, and we took the bike right to the dealership where they offloaded it and took it in the shop for insurance rebuild. But that's the story. That's how I crashed my bike. That's how I recovered. That's how I got the scooter all done. I got new paint on it, new pipes, new seats, new fenders, new gas tank, chrome, everything insurance paid for. And so nothing on it was original anymore. It had to be done because the bike was, other than the frame being straight, everything else was pretty much totaled. There you go, cats. Ride hard and die free.